Hey, I'm Noel. I'm 25. I live in Aurora, Colorado, and I work as a freelance illustrator and part-time barista. Most days I juggle coffee orders and digital sketches, trying to make rent while keeping some part of my soul intact. I'm not the kind of guy who usually gets caught up in complicated situations. At least I didn't think I was until a few months ago. It all started the day I met Silas. He was this laid-back, funny guy I met at a local community workshop for digital design. We clicked instantly, not in a deep soul-bonding way, just easy casual. He mentioned that his mom was also into art mostly as a hobby and that I should stop by sometime. At first I didn't think much of it, but one Friday afternoon we both left class early and he invited me over to his place to hang out and play some retro games he kept talking about. I remember pulling up to their house, a cozy, single-story home with big windows and wind chimes by the porch. It had that lived-in feeling, the kind of place with mismatched cushions, a few chipped mugs, and shelves lined with old books. Warm, imperfect, real. Silas opened the door and yelled inside, "Mom, we're home!" A moment later, she appeared, and that was the first time I saw her. Rhea. She walked in from the kitchen with a dish rag in one hand and a loose bun that looked like it was done in a hurry, but somehow still looked elegant. She had this subtle magnetic energy, graceful but grounded. Her eyes locked on mine for half a second longer than what would be considered normal. "You must be Noel," she said, smiling. "Silas mentioned you. I was starting to think you were imaginary." We laughed and I said something dumb, like, "I exist, promise." I didn't know what I expected Silas's mom to be like. Maybe older, maybe colder. Not this. Not a woman with quiet confidence, casual humor, and this presence. The three of us hung out in the living room for a bit. She brought us lemonade and left us to our video games. But even then I felt her occasionally glance in from the kitchen or hallway. Not in a creepy way, just curious, a little amused. At one point, Silas left to grab some snacks from a nearby store. It was only a 5-minute drive, but he said he wanted to pick up a specific energy drink he swore by. I was left sitting in their living room flipping through TV channels when Rhea walked in again, this time drying her hands with a towel. "Silas won't be long," she said, sitting down in the armchair across from me. "He still thinks those drinks make him better at Mario Kart." I chuckled. He's convinced. There was a moment of silence after that. Not awkward, just quiet. I looked over at her. She looked back. For a moment it felt like neither of us was exactly sure who we were to each other. Then she leaned her elbow on the armrest and tilted her head slightly. "You have kind eyes," she said. That caught me off guard. "Thanks, I guess," she smiled softly. "I mean it. You seem thoughtful. Most guys your age are all noise." I laughed nervously. "Well, I think too much sometimes." "Better than not thinking at all," she said, then glanced at the floor before meeting my eyes again. If only I were younger. The room suddenly felt smaller, quieter. The sound of the clock on the wall grew louder. I didn't say anything. What could I say? My heart was thudding, but my face stayed calm. Then she smiled again, the kind of smile that covers something deeper, and stood up. "Anyway, let me get started on dinner. You staying?" "Ah, sure. If that's okay." "Of course," she said, already walking toward the kitchen. But before she turned the corner, she looked back at me just briefly. And in her eyes, I saw something. It wasn't just a joke. It wasn't just passing curiosity. There was something else there, something real. The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about Rhea. It wasn't just what she said, "If only I were younger." It was how she looked at me when she said it, like there was something unspoken suspended between us in that quiet room. I tried to brush it off, told myself I was overthinking, but deep down I knew I wasn't imagining it. Silas and I kept hanging out as usual. Coffee shops, late-night gaming, a couple of chill house parties. A few times he invited me back to his place, and I found myself accepting mostly because I wanted to see her again. I wasn't proud of that, but it was true. Every time I stepped into that house, a part of me expected something. Rhea was always around, sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes reading in the living room, always casual, but her eyes lingered just a second longer than necessary. Her comments were never inappropriate, never crossing a line, but they danced on the edge. One evening, maybe a week after that first visit, She commented on one of my Instagram stories a photo of a sketch I'd done of an older woman's face. Nothing special, just a practice portrait. She replied, "She looks like someone who knows exactly what she wants." I stared at the message for a good minute before replying, "That's what I was going for." She answered, "You nailed it." Nothing overt, just enough to make me think. Then she started replying more often. A funny meme here, a quick "this made me think of you" video there. Every message a little closer, a little more personal. One Thursday afternoon, I got a text from her. Not Silas. Rhea. "Hey, sorry to bother you. Do you know how to reset the Wi-Fi box? Silas isn't answering." I was 2 blocks away at a cafe. Without thinking, I texted back, "Yeah, I can swing by." When she opened the door, she smiled like she expected me. She was in leggings and an oversized t-shirt, hair tied up, no makeup, effortless, beautiful. "The Wi-Fi box is being dramatic again," she said, stepping aside to let me in. I reset the modem in about 30 seconds. It wasn't a real issue, I knew that. So did she. "Can I offer you coffee as payment?" she asked, already heading to the kitchen. I hesitated, then followed. She poured 2 cups, handed me one, and leaned against the counter. I stood across from her, sipping slowly, trying not to stare at how the afternoon light hit her collarbone. "Thanks for coming," she said after a moment. "I didn't want to bug Silas while he's out. I knew you were close by." "No problem," I replied. "Always happy to help." She looked at me for a few seconds, then said, "You're very easy to be around, Noel. That's rare." I felt my face warm up. "Thanks. You're easy to talk to, too." We both sipped silent again. This time it felt charged. Then she changed the subject, asking about my freelance work, why I like to draw most. I told her I was still figuring it out, that some days I felt like I had a voice. Other days I felt like an imposter. She listened, really listened. Eyes focused. Soft smile, no interruptions, no judgment. At some point, she reached out to take my empty mug, and her fingers brushed mine. Just for a second, I froze. So did she. Then she took the cup and turned to the sink like nothing happened. "I like that you don't pretend to have it all figured out," she said back to me. "Men who act like they know everything are exhausting." I wanted to say something clever, something that would keep the energy going, but I couldn't think straight. I just nodded and said, "I guess I'm still learning." She turned around, leaned against the sink, and crossed her arms. "Good. Don't rush to become someone else just to impress people. You're more interesting just being you." That moment hung in the air like a held breath. I left 10 minutes later, thanking her again, heart pounding the whole walk home. From that point on, things picked up pace. We started texting regularly, not flirty, not outright romantic, but warm, familiar, personal. She started sending songs. She liked random thoughts late at night, like, "Do you ever feel like the more you grow, the less you understand about people?" I always replied. I wanted those messages. I waited for them. One Saturday afternoon, Silas invited me over to watch a game. He got caught up on the phone with someone outside, and I ended up inside with Rhea again. She was folding laundry on the couch, and we started talking, like usual small stuff at first, then deeper. At some point, she looked at me and said, "You know, if you were 10 years older and I was 10 years younger," I raised an eyebrow. "We'd still be strangers at a grocery store." She laughed. "No, we'd probably be figuring out how to explain things to Silas." There was no pretense anymore. We were both thinking the same thing. I said nothing, but I couldn't look away. She didn't either. That night when I got home, she sent a text. "Don't overthink today. I just like talking to you, that's all." Same here. But we both knew it wasn't just that anymore. I didn't see Silas much the week after that. He was busy with midterms and hanging out with some girl from his class, the one he mentioned once or twice, but never brought around. I didn't mind the space. If anything, it gave me room to breathe, but not from him, from Rhea. Or maybe about Rhea, because the more time passed, the harder it got to pretend we were just being friendly. We kept texting late at night, and in the middle of the day, she'd send something small, a photo of her garden, a line from a book she was reading, a question like, "Do you think people always mean what they say?" And I'd reply every time. I didn't know what I was doing. Not really. I wasn't trying to seduce her, but I wasn't walking away either. Then came Saturday. Silas texted in the morning, "Spending the night at Breeze. I'll be back tomorrow. You good?" "All good. Enjoy." I didn't think much of it until 2 hours later when Rhea texted, "If you're not busy tonight, I'm making lentil soup and grilled cheese. Could use a taste tester." My chest tightened. It was innocent technically, but I knew what it meant. "Can't turn down soup. Want me to bring wine? That would be lovely." I bought a bottle of red and stood on her porch for a second longer than I should have before knocking. When she opened the door, she looked different, not overdone, just softer. Her hair down a loose sweater that slipped slightly off one shoulder and jeans. She wasn't trying to be anyone else. She was just being Rhea, and it hit me harder than I expected. "Come in," she smiled. "You brought the good kind." "I Googled wine that won't make you look cheap," I joked. She laughed and let me inside. The house smelled like herbs and toasted bread. The radio was playing something low and jazzy in the background. It didn't feel like a trap. It didn't feel planned. It felt warm. We ate at the kitchen table, talked about everything and nothing. She asked about my family. I told her how my mom had moved to Oregon with her new husband, how my dad was barely in the picture. She nodded quietly, listening. Then she said, "I used to think being alone was the worst thing, but sometimes it's a kind of peace." I asked her if she ever got lonely. "All the time," she said, "but I'm not sure I want to give up the space I've made for myself." That hit me. I understood it more than I could say. After dinner, we moved to the living room. The lights were dimmer there, a few candles lit, no overheads. We sat on opposite ends of the couch legs curled toward each other. The wine was kicking in, but not too much, just enough to feel things more clearly. She asked if she could see my art. Not the Instagram stuff, the real stuff. So I opened my sketch app on my tablet and showed her a few projects I hadn't posted: portraits, small stories, faces I invented from nothing. "You draw like someone who watches people very closely," she said. "Is that good?" Uh, it means you notice things. Most people don't." I set the tablet down. There was a pause. Then she asked, "Do you think this is wrong?" I looked up. Her eyes were darker in that light, serious. "I think if we were doing something wrong, we'd know." "I feel like I should know better," she said almost to herself. "Maybe knowing better just means knowing exactly how it'll hurt." She laughed quietly. "You're too young to say stuff like that." And then, like it was the most natural thing in the world, she leaned toward me. Not fast, not hesitant, just deliberately, and I didn't pull away. Our lips met halfway. It wasn't hungry, it wasn't desperate. It was slow, careful, like we were both afraid to shatter whatever fragile thing we'd created between us. Her hand found my cheek. Mine rested gently on her hip. The kiss deepened, but not in a movie scene way, more like two people who had both been waiting too long for someone to see them. When we pulled apart, she didn't speak. Neither did I. She looked down and smiled sadly. "I said I liked talking to you," she whispered. "Now I've gone and made it complicated." I shook my head. "You didn't. I did too." She leaned her forehead against mine for a moment, then stood up. "I'm going to wash the dishes," she said softly. "You don't have to help." I stayed on the couch. I heard the faucet, the clink of plates, the sound of her exhale as she stood there alone. When she came back into the room, her hair was tied up again. She looked composed, controlled, but her eyes still held the same thing I saw that first day. "I think we should talk tomorrow," she said. "Okay, I mean it. No games, no pretending. I'll be here." She nodded almost to herself. "Good." I left a few minutes later. She didn't walk me to the door, but I could feel her watching as I stepped off the porch. I didn't sleep much that night, and I don't think she did either. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I dreamed the whole thing, that kiss, her voice saying, "I think we should talk tomorrow." The warmth of her skin, the pause before she pulled away. I lay in bed for almost an hour, replaying everything, every glance, every word, every silence. But reality set in the second I checked my phone. Nothing from her, Mom. Silas had texted, though, back later today. "You around?" "Yeah, probably. Let me know." Just a normal check-in. He had no idea. Around noon, I decided to go for a walk. I wandered around the neighborhood, hands in my pockets, half hoping I'd run into her outside her house. I didn't. The curtains were drawn, no movement. By 3:00 p.m., I gave in and texted her. "I've been thinking about last night. Still here if you want to talk." Nothing. I didn't push. I knew her type, or I was starting to. Rhea was a woman who needed space. She chose her moments carefully, and if you tried to corner her emotionally, she'd shut down fast. That evening, Silas came by my apartment and acted completely normal. Talked about Bri, asked if I'd seen the latest episode of some show, offered me half a burrito. I nodded, laughed, kept up the act, but my mind was elsewhere. I felt like I was living two lives, the one where I was still Silas's chill friend, and the one where his mother had kissed me with a kind of sadness I couldn't shake. Another day passed. Then around 10 p.m. the next night, I got a text. Can we talk? Are you free? Yes, I can come by. No, can we talk here? Just text for now. I waited. I wasn't planning on that kiss, I need you to know that. I wasn't either. But I'm not sorry. Neither am I, but I'm confused. About what it meant. About what it should mean. She didn't reply after that. We didn't text the next day or the day after, but the tension didn't go anywhere. When I finally saw her again, it was 3 days later. Silas had invited me over for lunch. His dad had dropped off some steaks, and he was excited to grill. It was a casual thing. The three of us ate outside on the patio, laughing about nothing. Rhea acted like nothing had happened. She was polite, friendly, smiling, but her eyes, they kept avoiding mine. After lunch, Silas went to take a call in his room. I stood in the kitchen drying a plate when she walked in and placed her glass in the sink. You're good at pretending, I said, not looking up. She paused. So are you. We stood in silence for a moment. I didn't mean to ghost you, she said quietly. I just didn't know how to respond. It's fine. No, it's not. I finally looked at her. So what now? She sighed. Now I don't know. I don't do this kind of thing, Noel. I'm not some bored housewife looking for attention. I never thought you were. I'm not asking for promises, I just need honesty. Okay. She looked at me sharp and searching. You want something real? I nodded. I want you, Rhea. I'm not trying to play games. Her face softened. She took a step closer, then stopped. Then we have to be careful. This can't be messy. I won't let it ruin Silas's trust. I understand. But I didn't. Not fully. Not yet. For the next couple of weeks, we slipped into something like a routine, secret, unspoken, inconsistent. I'd come by when Silas wasn't home, sometimes just to talk. Sometimes not. Sometimes she'd kiss me like she couldn't stop herself. Other times she'd keep her distance and say things like, I'm not sure this is fair to you. Or worse, maybe this was a mistake. She was unpredictable, and not in a cute, spontaneous way, in a way that made me feel like I was constantly walking on a wire. One minute she'd send a voice message late at night about how she couldn't stop thinking about me. The next day she wouldn't answer at all. Once after a quiet dinner, she asked me why I liked her. I told her the truth, that she was unlike anyone I'd ever met, that I admired her strength, her wit, her calmness, that I liked how she saw through people and how she saw me. She listened, then looked away. You say that now, she whispered, but eventually you'll resent the things that make me me. What does that mean? It means I'm older, I'm stubborn. I need space, I don't always want to explain myself. Sometimes I just need to be left alone, and most people don't get that. I leaned forward. I'm not most people. She looked at me, really looked, and said, that's exactly what they all say. That night I left early. The next week things got worse. She grew distant, shorter replies, less warmth. I asked her if she wanted to stop. She said no, but also said she needed time, that I was a lot, and she wasn't sure she could give what I wanted. The problem was, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. All I knew was that being around her made me feel alive, and not being around her made everything dull. One night I waited outside her house for half an hour. She had said she'd be home. Lights were off. No one answered. I walked home in the dark. That was the night I realized something was shifting, that this wasn't going to last. Not because we didn't care, but because we were too different, too misaligned, too afraid of what came next. She had walls, and I was still learning how to knock without breaking them down. I didn't hear from Rhea for 4 days. Not a text, not a like on a post, nothing. The silence this time felt different, not angry, not dramatic, just distant, like she was quietly pulling back from something she had already decided to let go of. I tried not to overthink it. but of course I did. Every hour, every night, I kept checking my phone. I typed out 3 different messages and deleted all of them. I didn't want to chase her, but I also couldn't pretend I didn't care. Then on the 5th day, around 6:00 p.m., she texted me, "Can you come over tonight just for a bit? I need to talk." My stomach dropped. I didn't ask what it was about. I didn't say anything at all. I just replied, "I'll be there in 20." When I pulled up, it was already dusk. The sky was fading from pale gold into gray. Her porch light was on, but the house felt unusually quiet. I knocked. She opened the door wearing jeans and a cardigan. No makeup, hair pulled back. No smile. "Hey," I said gently. "Hey," she echoed, then stepped aside to let me in. We sat in the living room, no wine this time, no jazz in the background, just silence and the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. She sat across from me, elbows resting on her knees, hands clasped. She looked like she hadn't slept well. "I'm not going to drag this out," she said. I nodded. "Okay. I care about you, I do, and I know this whole thing started without either of us really planning it, but I've been thinking a lot. Too much probably, and I need to end this." I didn't react right away. I just sat there trying to hold my breath steady. She continued, "I don't regret what happened. Not any of it, but I can feel myself getting pulled into something I don't know how to carry, and I don't want to hurt you more by pretending I can. I'm not asking you to carry anything." I said, my voice lower than I expected. She nodded slowly. "I know, but that's the thing. You're asking for something honest, something that could grow. I'm not in that place, Noel. Not now, maybe not ever. I've lived a life, I've raised a kid. I've been through a marriage that left me a version of myself I barely recognized. I like my space, my quiet, my control. And as much as I want to be the woman who opens up again, I don't think I can be." I swallowed hard. "So that's it." "I think so." I looked down at my hands. "Was it just a distraction for you?" "No," she said instantly. "You were never that. Don't reduce it. You made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. You reminded me I'm still alive." I let the silence stretch between us. "You said you liked being around me," I finally said. "Was that not real?" "It was real," she said, her voice quiet. "But real doesn't always mean sustainable." I felt my chest tighten not from anger, but from the kind of sadness that comes when you realize the ending isn't sudden. It's slow, quiet, and inevitable. "I think I'll always wonder what this could have been," I said. "Maybe that's the best part," she replied. "That will never ruin it by dragging it out too far." She stood up, walked to the door, and opened it slowly. Not in a rude way, not cold, just final. I stood, walked over, and paused in front of her. We didn't hug. We didn't kiss. We just looked at each other one last time. Her eyes were soft, but there was no hesitation in them. "Take care of yourself, Noel," she said. "You too, Rhea." I walked out, and just like that, it was over. A week later, Silas invited me to grab burgers. He talked about his job, asked if I was still drawing, then mentioned his mom in passing. "She's been quiet lately, doing yoga every morning. I think she's going through some phase again." I smiled faintly. "Maybe she's just finding peace." He laughed. "Maybe. He never found out. I don't think he ever will." As for me, I moved on slowly, not bitter, just changed. I stopped waiting for her name to pop up on my phone. I started sleeping better. I threw myself into my art again. And for the first time in a long while, I started drawing without thinking of anyone else. What we had wasn't fake. It wasn't meaningless. It just wasn't meant to last. And that's okay. Noel and Rhea's story offers a poignant lesson about the delicate dance between connection and self-preservation, teaching us that sometimes the most meaningful moments are fleeting, yet profoundly transformative. Their fleeting romance, sparked by mutual understanding and unspoken longing, reveals the human need to feel seen, especially in moments of vulnerability. However, Rhea's decision to end things, driven by her need for independence and fear of disrupting her carefully guarded life, underscores the importance of honoring personal boundaries even when it hurts. Noel's struggle to navigate his feelings while respecting Rhea's space shows that true care often means letting go, allowing both people to grow without forcing a connection that isn't sustainable. This story urges us to cherish the connections that awaken us, but also to recognize when they've served their purpose, leaving us changed but not broken. It's a call to embrace the beauty of impermanent bonds, to listen to our hearts without losing sight of what we need to thrive, and to find peace in endings that allow us to move forward with grace. What moved you most in Noel and Ria's fleeting yet impactful journey? Have you ever experienced a connection that was beautiful but not meant to last? Share your reflections in the comments. We'd love to hear your stories. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join our community of soulful narratives. Let's keep exploring life's profound lessons together.